So I think I'm going to start at 6 o'clock.
She said it'd be nice if somebody from neighborhood service would come too, so I was gonna talk to Kendall.
Let the record show that the meeting is now reconvened. It is 8:01 PM. All members are present except for John Gurl. Begin with ordinances. Council Memo 227-17, an ordinance declaring certain properties as public nuisances. It's recommended said ordinance be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
In motion seconded to approve, Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 228-17 is an ordinance amending Chapter 8 Buildings, Construction, and Property Maintenance, Article 7, Property Maintenance Code, Division 6, Abandoned Residential Property Registration of the Code of Ordinances in the City of Joliet. It's recommended said ordinance be adopted.
So moved.
Second?
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 229-17, an ordinance approving a reclassification of 1226 Plainfield Road from R2 to B1 zoning. It's recommended this item be tabled to the May 16th council meeting.
Move to table.
Second?
Motion seconded to table Council Memo 229-17 to May 16th. Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman.
Before I say aye, the neighbors were notified of this because we had a meeting here at City Hall about a week or so ago, and the place was packed, and we did discuss this, that we were not going to do it immediately. It was going to be tabled to the 16th, so everybody knows in that neighborhood. So vote aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 230-17 is an ordinance approving a special use permit to allow an auto body repair shop located at 2402 McDonough Street.
So moved.
Second.
Mayor,
Yes.
just to review this, petitioner Stephen Nelson of Fine Line Collisions requesting special use permit for an auto body shop located at 2402 McDonough Street. It's about 1.7 acres, and it contains a 9,650 square foot metal building built in 1994. Building's been around for a long time, and it has a history of industrial uses. And there are 4 existing back bay doors in the back of the building, and there's adequate parking. It's being proposed by the Zoning Board of Appeals with traditional restrictions with an auto body shop, which is no long-term storage over 10 days of inoperable vehicles. And again, the city reserves the right to terminate this use based on any violation of this special use permit.
Can I ask for clarification on the motion, because staff is recommending a resolution be adopted denying the special use permit, but there also is an ordinance included in the backup as well as an option for approval.
Has the motion been made?
It was motion and
I'll-
seconded, but I was asking for
I didn't realize that.
clarification.
I'll withdraw the motion till we decide, you know.
Just a moment.
Second.
Right. Unless my notes are wrong.
Is there neighborhood opposition?
I apologize. I think that's the one. Is that the one? I may have the wrong one. I
I
apologize.
believe that's the next.
I apologize.
agenda
I
item.
jumped ahead. So,
So moved.
staff is recommending approval.
They are.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Been motion and seconded to approve Council Memo 230-17. Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Motion carried.
I didn't see that.
Council Memo 231-17 is an ordinance approving a special use permit to allow conversion of a 2-unit residence into a 3-unit residence within a B1 district located at 408 East Washington Street.
Move to deny.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to adopt a resolution denying a special use permit for 408 East Washington Street. Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
I do have a question, though. This property, even though it was red tagged, and several times after time, the person is still renting this out. How can we put a stop to this? Because inhabitable, it's a fire trap waiting to happen.
Should be a neighborhood services issue.
Because they'll red tag it, and the guy takes the, I mean, I read the whole thing. He takes the tag off, and then he keeps putting people in there, so.
I would like to address that, because it's me.
I'm sorry, are you the landlord?
Beg pardon?
Are you the landlord?
I didn't understand.
Are you the owner of the property? Can you step forward, please?
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to address this, because this goes back into the, when I first originally purchased this property, it was a 3-unit apartment building. I bought it for family usage. The property was rented out prior to the red tag, and I myself, upon my own volition, decided I wasn't going to rent it out until I went in and straightened the property out, cleaned it up and everything, make sure all the records were on the property. The property had originally had a permit for rental. So when I went back and straightened it out myself upon my own volition, and when I went to rent it out again, this is when my problem started. First of all, I was told that I wasn't to rent it out, not to rent it out, rather, until the inspector come in. Well, that was inappropriate. The property had already been rented out. I had closed it down on my own volition so we can clean it up and everything. I just said I was going to take my time. What had happened in this property, it had been rented out to a lot of family members, and the family member had did some damage to the inside. But insofar as the permit been placed on the property, it should never have been done. That's the first thing. There was no reason for, there were no safety issues in that property. It should never have been red tagged, never. Now, when I come down to apply for a permit, I was denied the permit. And another thing, the property went from 15 violation to 20, about 75 or 78 violation accusation. So I'm saying that was the issue came about with the property and with the red tag. The red tag should never have been placed on that property,
Jim,
because there was no legal reason for it to be denied a permit, and there was no there was no hazardous to the property. Now I was repairing the property. The thing about that, when the property,
I have a question, sir.
yes,
Jim, if you know, was the property red tagged because of the violations, or was it red tagged because it was not zoned for 3 units, only for 2 units?
I'll defer to Kendall Jackson on that question, please.
The property was originally red tagged because of the violations. Staff was willing to work with the property owner as long as he was going to comply with the violations. As time went on, there was no compliance. The staff brought him into administrative hearing. Still no compliance. The zoning issue came up. He requested to go through the zoning process. He went to the Zoning Board of Appeals and requested an additional unit for approval and was denied. During all that time, our neighborhood services staff monitored the property and tried to work with Mr. Matthews on bringing it into code compliance, but it was tagged because of the life safety issues. We discovered wiring problems, plumbing issues behind drywall. There was a bathroom located in the landing on the second floor that did not meet code. So for those reasons, it was tagged.
All right, thank you.
I would like to respond to that because there's no safety issue with the wiring. There was a wire hanging down, which is a dead wire hanging down, and that's not unless it's actually electrical fire usage in it. Then that would be different. But the wire was just a wire hanging down. You can come there and test. I left it there. You can come there and check it out now. The same wire.
Sir,
A lot of
Sir,
the issues
excuse me.
that came about was originally.
we're not going to redo the hearing tonight. You may want to speak to an attorney and challenge what happened at the zoning board, but we're going to move forward with the agenda today.
Okay, but I want to stress that a lot of the things that was said is not accurate, and a lot of the things was corrected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we continue with the roll call vote, I just want to remind you, the motion on the table is to adopt a resolution denying the special use permit. Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Motion carried. The special use permit is denied. Council Memo 232-17 is an ordinance approving a special use permit for a staffing agency located at 1250 West Jefferson Street. It's recommended said ordinance be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
Mayor?
Yes.
Just for clarification for the public, this is a special use at the current vacant Enterprise Car Rental located on the south side of Jefferson Street at 1250 West Jefferson. It's approximately 15,000 square feet in a B1 neighborhood business district. They're proposing a use where they would have employees actually park in the garage so that there's adequate parking out front. They don't anticipate over several people a day showing up and going in and out of the building.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve Council Memo 232-17. Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 233-17 was previously tabled to the May 16th council meeting. Council Memo 234-17, an ordinance amending Ordinance 16569, which established salary ranges and fringe benefits for exempt employees. It's being recommended this be tabled to the May 16th council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded to table Council Memo 234-17 to the May 16th council meeting. Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Motion carried. Under resolutions, Council Memo 236-17, a resolution accepting a grant from the Illinois Housing Development Authority's Abandoned Residential Property Municipal Relief Program. It's recommended said ordinance be adopted.
Motion to
So moved.
Been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 237-17, a resolution requesting approval to authorize a representative to sign Illinois Environmental Protection Agency loan documents. It's recommended said resolution be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
Mayor?
Yes.
This is housekeeping in that you adopted a prior resolution stating that James Hawk signed them. So by virtue of my retirement, designating the positions of city manager and the mayor, whoever's available and whoever's in those seats can sign these documents.
Motion seconded to approve. Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
Aye.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 238-17 is a resolution appropriating funds for the 2017 pavement parking program. It's recommended said resolution be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
Been motion and seconded to approve. Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 239-17, a resolution appropriating additional funds for the Phase 1 engineering services for the Garnsey Avenue over Spring Creek Improvement Project. It's recommended said resolution be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motion and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Motion carried. Council Memo 240-17, a resolution urging the Illinois General Assembly to introduce legislation to transfer ownership of the Joliet Correctional Center prison to the city of Joliet and to the Joliet Historical Museum.
Mayor, members of council, this is coming before you because Senator McGuire and State Representative Walsh formed the Collins Street Task Force that meets several times a year with the goal of promoting economic development in that area and focusing on the site of the U.S. Steel property and a reuse of the Joliet Correctional Facilities property. When you meet somebody almost anywhere in the country, they ask you where you're from, and you say Joliet, they typically say, oh, you've got the prison. And so the state of Illinois closed this facility 15 years ago, and it's continued to fall into a state of disrepair. It's only been a couple of months ago that we finally got permission from the Department of Corrections to even arrest people who trespass on the site. In the meantime, the police have gone there, and they do regularly patrol it anyways, but they kind of just say shoo and don't come back. So we can finally do some prosecution. And recently, we've advertised that fact so that we can try and keep people out of there, because I'll be showing you some slides to show you exactly what the state of disrepair is. And first of all, let me show you, this first photo is from a CMAP study. The first scenario that they proposed was a $3.8 million renovation to bring utilities and renovate several buildings that would allow people to enter 2 cell blocks, the kitchen and dining facility, the hospital, the reception hall, the west garage, and totally landscape the interior of the site. What you see is scenario B, which has 3 soccer fields in it, totally renovated buildings at a cost of $30 million. And if that wasn't enough, they had a scenario C that was $79 million. Well, I'm here this evening to tell you that based on the current state of disrepair in the facility, we aren't proposing anything close to any of these plans. What I want you to see, of course, is the view from the parking lot. You can see that a lot of the windows are broken in the administrative building. I can share with you that our fire department has been in there several years ago to put out a fire which completely devastated a building. But at the moment, there's all these combustibles within the building. This is the administration building where the roof was allowed to leak, and the second and third floor collapsed on the first floor going into the basement as a result of the state's disrepair. This area is, has yellow caution tape around it. Anybody who goes into there and gets close to it risks further collapse of the area. You can see that there are openings in the fences throughout the property. In this picture, this is the cell block, and hanging off the ceiling is the leaded paint. Part of the tour, which I'm going to have Greg Pierbolt review with you, does not allow people to have access to potentially environmental hazards on the site. This is the church, and there will not be services this Sunday. Or any weddings in the near future. This is their warning sign. No trespassers. Stay away. So, again, these buildings are filled with things that could be set on fire. You can look at those rafters, they're all wood, even though the walls are stone. There's a lot of cleanup and removal. More importantly, when our firefighters went in for a recent fire, there's the water and the central heating plant distributed those two products to all of the buildings on the site in underground tunnels. Well, there's access points, and these covers have been taken off, and potentially a firefighter going in to put out a fire in the middle of the night could step in there. Now, at the moment, we've worked with Department of Corrections to do some tack welding of the covers on these spots, so I think from that standpoint, we're fairly safe. But you can see what happened at the fire several years ago. Everything's black and just sitting there. Again, this was the most recent fire that occurred out there as a result of vandalism. Doors are ripped off on some of the buildings, providing easy access. As many of you know, a couple of young ladies broke into the facility recently and ended up locking themselves in one of the cells and had to be rescued by the fire department. Thank God that they had a cell phone power to even call somebody, because we're not sure who knew they were even in there. So my approach to ownership of the prison, first and foremost, is public safety. I think everybody thinks we own it already, and they ask me, when are we going to do something about it? And they're actually shocked when I say, well, the state owns it, and who knows when it's going to happen. Co-ownership with the museum is being proposed, and that makes sense because we would have the museum conduct the tours of the site. Potential uses of the East Prison would be the film industry utilizing it, and a haunted house or any other imaginative uses that could be conducted on that site. So why is it taking so long? Because the state's dragged their feet, and before anybody takes over any of that state property, we want to be sure that there's not any environmental exposure to anybody we take on any tours. So the state just last year completed Phase 2 environmental engineering, and we hired another environmental engineering firm to review that plan and coordinate that with Greg Peerbolt's proposed tour so that he could take a look at where the test sites were and where people would be walking on the property. I provided you as backup their report, basically saying that based on the tours as proposed, there is no environmental exposure to anybody that would be participating in any kind of tour. So one of the things I'm proposing also is that the utilities, I approached Jim Egan about the water tower that's on the property, and he said that the city had always had plans to improve the sprinkler system over in Rock Run Industrial area, and the only way to do that was to put an elevated tower in the area. So I said, what about the possibility of moving this tower? And he said that we could save over $100,000 by physically moving this tower rather than purchasing a new one and building it on site there. So what I'm proposing is that the museum and city together own the property, that the utilities department, in essence, purchase some of the property. And what the picture you see right now is, and and this is a survey of the property. We've had a volunteer surveyor that Senator McGuire knows has already surveyed the east portion. Let me go back and show you that all of that northern part of the east property, the Forest Preserve is interested in. Now, they've got cleanup over there. There was a gun range there, and so there will be remediation necessary, and they have to come up with a plan that's acceptable to IEPA. And it may be something as simple as removal of the dirt piles and put in a parking lot. They don't know yet. But the corner there includes the state forensic building, which the state wants to keep and utilize. It has the east prison portion, and then that fourth parcel would include the tower, and there's a well and a water building there as well. And so the proposal is that, again, the utilities department purchase it for $100,000. Greg will go into some detail, but basically, in terms of what would that money be utilized for, initially it would be security. It's putting up signs, putting up motion detector lights, making a camera connection to the police department some way, and getting the word out there that if you trespass on this site, you will be arrested and prosecuted. From there, the tours can expand and, I believe, make money. Now, I approached the museum board initially, and as the mayor and Councilwoman Quillman knows, they were a little apprehensive. And one of the members finally said, well, wait a minute, who are we? The city owns our building, the city owns our collection the day we open. They own anything they've added after that, and we contribute $275,000 a year to their budget. So they're very apprehensive that based on their limited funds that they can take this on and make it grow in any way. And that's why I think less than half of the $100,000 could be spent before they could start running those tours and make it a viable attraction to the community. I think there's connections with the Chicago Tourism Board. There's all kinds of conventions that come into McCormick Center, and with that kind of volume of people, they're looking for side trips for spouses to take during the daytime while their spouse is attending the conference. And so a train ride to Joliet and a tour of the prison and lunch downtown and a train ride back is, I think, a spectacular idea which will hopefully raise enough funding that someday we don't have to continue contributing as much money subsidizing the museum, and it could be actually self-supporting. I know that's their goal. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Greg Pierbolt so that he can go into a little further explanation for you. Greg?
Thank you, City Manager Hawk. Mayor, Council, thank you for having me tonight. What a great introduction, right? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight about sort of the economic development side. My challenge was show the council some places where this is working around the country, show some comparable sites, show some results, show some metrics, show some numbers. So I intend to do that. I'm starting out with just Joliet in quotation marks because part of a recurring theme you're going to see throughout this presentation is this built-in international branding that Joliet has. And I understand that can be for better or worse in some cases, but it's there. To introduce myself, I believe I've met most of you. Greg Pierbolt, Executive Director of the Joliet Area Historical Museum, also a member of the Collins Street Task Force since 2003. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about how we got here, how I got involved with this project, what I've been doing with this project for 4 years, how the museum got there, how the city got there, how all of it got there, and I'll do that in under 10 minutes. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the attributes of successful sites, specifically a document produced in 2007 for the Sing Sing prison in New York. What I'm calling the Golden is in Golden Gate standard, which is of course Alcatraz. The power of redemption is in the Shawshank Redemption with the Ohio State Reformatory and what's known as the Shawshank Trail. I'm especially focusing on Eastern State Penitentiary. And just a brief poll, has anyone heard of Eastern State Penitentiary or visited? That's actually the right answer. Stay with me on that. They've really had to build the brand, and they've been successful. I will show you their revenue. Without the international recognition that Joliet has, they've had a very successful site. And finally, just tie that back to us and what we're doing, and talk about end use and what that might be and what that looks like. So, I want everyone on the council to know that when I began in 2013, my challenge from my board of directors, stated at my interview, was find us some sustaining revenue. We don't know that we can stay on city money forever. So we're challenging you to find us ways where we can sustain our operations. I've likened it to, American policy with oil. Like, we want to get off it one day, but, we're going to still need it today for a little while. But let's find ways to bolster it in the meantime. So to do that, I really came in wanting to follow the interest and honestly the concerns of the Joliet community, because I know this is a polarizing topic. No one has mediocre feelings about this. They have very strong feelings one way or the other. And I'm sure that's true on our council. I'm sure that's true on my board. So we, like you, need to be responsive to our constituents. And, of course, what is working in other places, and how are other organizations finding success, especially in the post-recession landscape where there are still many challenges for nonprofits. And, of course, we look at financial metrics. That is a big part of how we judge our success. I do not think revenue is a dirty word. Some of my colleagues may in the museum field. But certainly we have to make sure that we're surviving and sustaining, and we're here for the community in the long term. So historiography and science, it's the same thing. If you make a claim, you better have evidence to back it up, right? So that's what I'm going to do a little bit tonight. And one final preface, I do want to say that as it pertains to the resolution, the board is still not voted on it. We are uncommitted to it, as City Manager Hawk indicated. That was received very well. We thought it was just going to be too much for us to take on our own in terms of owning it by ourselves. Of course, concerned with our financial wherewithal. Me especially being concerned if we jump into that, we get something wrong, we don't think of something or discuss something, I'm going to have to come back here and ask you guys for a bailout. Boy, do I really not want to do that. Probably will be one of the last things I do at the museum. So let's have this conversation right now, and let's have it frankly. So the site, Jim alluded to it. You have the old Joliet prison, as it's known online. The area in the red, again, we're not, there's more of an interest in that big expanse of land. We're talking kind of specifically about what we call Prison West and Prison East, the Blues Brothers prison, if you like, and then across Collins Street to the ECU, the former women's property. And, again, going back to, someone labeled it as Fox River, where if you watch Prison Break, that's officially on Google Maps, the Fox River prison. So nice little in-joke there from Google. So it's familiar literally and figuratively to millions. The name, the architect, the building structure. We're actually working on a tour to do limestone structures in a couple weeks, and I made a comment to one of the city staff members, you know you're in a historic community when it has a building material named after it, right? So you have Joliet limestone out there, you have Joliet limestone in our Capitol building, you have Joliet limestone in one of the most iconic buildings in the Chicago area or the Midwest, the Chicago Water Tower, and all the same architect, W.W. Boyington. So to me, it's compelling that there has been a book written on the subject of penal tourism and how it's happening all over the world. I have the book right here. Actually, Eastern State is on the cover there. But a little preface of that book, in case you don't want to read all 300 pages of it. There are over 100 prison museums around the world on 6 continents. In the tourist-rich cities of San Francisco, London, and Dublin, historic prisons are the leading attractions. People remain fascinated by prisons and criminology. Incarceration is at the forefront of political discourse. Our pop culture, music, television, films is rife for better or worse with references to prison and prison culture. And on this note, we've already engaged some of our local universities on this topic of things like archaeology and criminal justice and the School of Business at St. Francis. So there are also those opportunities. So I started with Sing Sing. And of course, Sing Sing, right? It has that immediate recognition. You know exactly what I'm talking about when I say Sing Sing. The phrase "up the river" emanates from Sing Sing Prison. So they did a study in 2007 that was very detailed and probably very expensive. So they looked at things like proximity to a major city. They looked at things like a strong transportation network. They looked at things, public transportation. And actually, their museum is in a still active Sing Sing prison. I kid you not. So I don't know which of the two of us has it better. But they did, unfortunately, the recession put those efforts to sleep, as they also did to some extent with Joliet Prison. But as of December 2016, they've received a $500,000 state grant to begin to fund that prison. And of course, I can't talk about any prison museum without talking about Alcatraz. The Golden Gate National Recreation Area is a unit of the National Park Service. Was established by Congress in 1972 as part of a trend to make national park resources more accessible to urban population and bring parks to the people. At 16 million people, the Golden Gate Park, of which Alcatraz is a unit, is the most trafficked unit of the National Park Service. And when Alcatraz opened in 1973, 50,000 people visited in the first year. It was estimated this was more than had ever occupied the island in its entire history. And I actually went to Alcatraz on our honeymoon and was able to talk to folks there. Several people, echoing what Jim said, made the comment about, you're not making a honeymoon in Alcatraz joke over there, I hope. But several people commented, Joliet, wow, you guys have a prison out there, and we predate Alcatraz by almost 75 years. So let's talk numbers at Alcatraz. And, I'll preface this with, do I expect us to get Alcatraz numbers? I don't. I'll be very honest with you. But when you're talking $30 million of revenue, what would 10% of that do? What would 10% of 1.5 million annual visitors do? 10% of 30 million could fund our operations for 5 years completely. And actually, we bought our tickets day of, and the cab driver almost crashed the car when he found out about that. $30 for an adult. They're open 363 days out of the year, so accessibility is an important part of this puzzle. 1,600 tickets sold the first hour after the government shut down in 2013, and 5,700 average daily tickets sold. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a lesser-known example, the Shawshank Redemption, the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. This facility is in the middle of nowhere. There's not really much by it, but it achieved fame from the movie The Shawshank Redemption, right? This is the Shawshank Prison. The facility was the principal location of the '94 film The Shawshank Redemption, and to me it demonstrates the power that one film can have on a prison site, but the prison site can have over the wider community. The Reformatory is the centerpiece of the Shawshank Redemption of the area around Mansfield, Ohio. The film has had transformative economic development power on the region. In 2013, per a New York Times profile, it welcomed 80,000 visitors, estimated $3 million infusion into the local economy. But I'm going to do a little better than that with those numbers. I was able to locate their 2013 990. Through someone to your right, you can see some of the toughest years of the recession. In 7 years, they were able to double their income. It appears to be a break-even budget, so they kind of put back in the facility what they take in. But starting out in '06 with 700,000, I mean, that's more than the museum does each year, and then doubling it through some of the hardest years of the recession is incredibly impressive. To your left, that's just a little more interesting to me as a museum person, because the 990, put it up against, what are other comparable museum facilities in the area doing, and other organizations performing similar types of work on that top one, 170 compared to $1.5 million of income. So, I mean, that is just very telling. This is my final example, Eastern State Penitentiary. I personally think this is the closest corollary to Joliet. It is located in Philadelphia proper, very near the city center. It was operational from 1829 to 1871, and from 71 to 85, it was going through the same thing that Joliet's now going through. It had it much worse, according to Sean Kelly, who's actually quoted by Bob O'Conn in an article when he visited the Joliet prison, stating there was trees growing through their cell houses, and it looked like a Mayan ruin. And I also kept a part about the last city caretaker of the prison feeding the cats, because I thought that was awesome of him. So by 1991, they received funding from Pew Charitable Trust, just a private foundation, and stabilization and preservation efforts began. And What I want you to know about 1991 is that that's the year Terror Behind the Walls began, and it's now one of the largest and most successful haunted attractions in the country, and I'll show you some numbers on that as well. 96, William Penn Foundation got involved. You had the New York Times, you had Art in America, BBC, C-SPAN, PBS, attendance nearly doubling. I'm pointing out all those things to you because, this is a variety of private sources that they were able to utilize to get this site going and get it popular and get it funded. And that's Al Capone's cell on the left there. Very, I would argue he's a Chicago guy. He got arrested in Joliet. Why is Philadelphia making hay off him? So again, funding from private sources heavily. 1998, when Sean, around the time when Sean started, they started giving tours. They formed a dedicated nonprofit. That's kind of where I think we're at. I've actually heard it said, why doesn't the Collins Street Task Force form a nonprofit? Well, I don't want a competing nonprofit. Personally, and I just think this meets our mission, and the board has also concluded that this is close enough to our mission where we don't want to have to go through the time and the trouble and expense to form a new nonprofit to deal with this. So again, I think it's important to find out, Kelly's original budget, $74,000 in '95. Since then, it has grown to a full-time staff of 20, another 40 who work part-time or seasonally. And to me, it's important to know this is still an ongoing project. They're not done. They're still doing things out there. They have kind of parsed this work out over 20 plus years. And as of 2010, they were still re-roofing cell blocks. They were still targeting some buildings for demolition, some buildings for saving. So it is an ongoing process. It's not an overnight process by any means. And if I would like for you to remember one slide tonight, remember this one. These are some very impressive numbers. This is a 2014 990 filing, public record. I hope they're not mad at me for sharing. But $2 million in tours, $74,000 in site access, which means they lease it to films, photography places, $40,000 in memberships. The net fundraising activities, that is that haunted house. In 2 months, they take in $2.2 million, and that's net. That is not before expenses. That is after they pay their bills. They take $2.2 million in the months of September and October. So there's gold in them that are haunted hills. And also, I think it's important to know utilizing local vendors. How many Joliet vendors who are watching this would love to have that on their balance sheet for a year? $270,000 for a construction company, $240,000 for conservation, $170,000 for advertising. Finally, in fiscal year 14 profit, they are taking $1.7 million to the bank. That's where my interest is in this project. I mean, that's why I've been involved with it for 4 years and still, keeping this conversation going, and I'm here talking to you tonight. So will it work in Joliet? I'm arguing we have all these ingredients, and we have them even better positioned than Eastern State Penitentiary, which no one's heard of outside of Philadelphia, and their higher-ups admit that. We get people who come to see the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall, and they take side trips to Eastern State, and they fund us. And they're very heavily trafficked by local people. So we have this international recognition, which goes back to 1914 in the film industry. Empire filmed out there recently. That was $35,000. I don't know if Patriot did, but that's with no advertising. That's just, can we use it? Sure. What's a good number? 35. That's amazing. It's already making money out there. And I love this picture. This picture to me is so telling, and work with me here. It's a Three Stooges episode. It's called Three Smart Saps, and the trio must infiltrate a gangster-held prison to rescue their future father-in-law. It's Warden. In a party scene, the prison gang proudly displays pennants from their various institutions of higher learning. So you have Alcatraz, Leavenworth, Sing Sing, Joliet. And it's funny, but at the same time, I've always made the point, I do constantly hear, we don't want the prison city reputation. I argue, own it. You already have it. Own it. Have fun with it. And monetize it, right? So that picture to me, and this is in 1942, mind you, so very telling. Our tour, we actually proposed this originally with the state. We were kind of looking for a landlord to do this tour. And they just weren't having it. And it was also important to us that this was a downtown activity, that we weren't physically moving the museum out there. We're treating this like a bus trip. You take a shuttle from the museum, it's 3.5 miles either way, so you're there, you're back. We jokingly call it an exterior-interior tour or interior-exterior tour. We would walk paved paths. We would not allow access to buildings. We have a controlled number of groups. We have supervision from actually several former guards who have volunteered to do the tours, as well as part-time museum staff. And we've gotten approval from both the insurers and an environmental firm that this tour is safe, it will not contaminate anyone, and we can, it's a fairly turnkey operation. So here's a little bit of detail of the plan. Again, I think there's still a lot to see. There's still a lot of bang for your buck. You are getting a glimpse at the cell house. You are getting a glimpse at solitary confinement. You are seeing in slide 9 the original cell out at the Joliet prison, which they set up in the 50s after they did a remodeling. Of course, our transportation network. This is not a group I need to talk to about our transportation network and how great it has been for so many other facets of life in Joliet, for jobs in Joliet. This project is no exception. And the tourist infrastructure to me is, again, just an ingredient we have already that so many places do not have, especially Route 66. And my colleague Debbie Jo Erickson is here tonight from the Red Carpet Corridor. The number 2 attraction in Illinois outside of Chicago. I actually spoke personally with Governor Rauner about this at one point and asked him, what do you think? I did not know this about him, but he lit up, and he was a big travel tourism guy. He was the chair of Choose Chicago for many years. So he said that would make a great Route 66 attraction. Talk to our tourist guide, Illinois, let him know what you're planning. And finally, the Illinois Route 66 Scenic Byways Commission, Bill Kelly, is a huge advocate for the project. He's convinced this will be one of the top 5 projects on the entirety of Route 66. An opinion on end use. Again, Jim pointed to this study, $3.8 million. I don't know if I agree. You have sailboats out in the Quarry Lake. That doesn't feel quite like Joliet, right? So the $3.8 million figure attests mainly to capital needs. I think Jim doesn't like that figure. I don't like that figure. Probably your question is, are you saying you need $3.8 million before you can start the tour? Absolutely not. Because all 3 of these profitable sites I just talked about have one common characteristic. They're empty prisons. You go to Alcatraz, it's an empty prison. They have a couple cells decorated, but you're walking around an empty prison. There's no climate control out there. There's very little electricity. Same thing, and I've not visited, but I do know this from talking with their VP, no utilities at Eastern State. It's an empty, abandoned prison, as is Mansfield. And they are supported overwhelmingly by earned income. People participate. This is not something that cities are having to continually dump money into to support. But they still do maintain those strong public-private relationships with governmental entities, the National Park Service, City of Philadelphia. I believe Mansfield is hooked up with either the city or the county. So that's an important part of it too. So what do we do? What do we do today? That's the question, because so many people think 20 years ahead of time, and that is a good way to think most times. But for us, what can we just do today? Our board has talked about the need for a memo of understanding. We need to just sit down with city staff and outline what your participation looks like, what our participation looks like, get that tour program up and running. We really need to assess the site. When you have that $3.8 million number, we haven't been able to get in there to assess what we want to keep and not keep, for that matter. There probably will be some demolition of buildings that we don't need or are too expensive to maintain. And also from an engineering standpoint, what is safe to have people in, what is not, and what do we need to do to mitigate that? Finally, demonstrate the interest. People who are coming to this will show interest to developers. That's how you attract developers, stakeholders, grant funders. Show them interest. To put it another way, if I'm attracting a developer to this project, that developer wants to know that I can draw 10 or 20 or 50,000 people each year. And it was famously said, I believe Councilman Hugg, I don't want to go into the bed and breakfast out there. Neither do I. I want people to stay at bed and breakfast in Joliet. If they want to have a meal, I want them to have a meal at Tin Roof or Juliet's or someplace downtown. We don't need to get into the restaurant business out there. The profitable ones don't do that. And there's plenty already. So that is the thing that attracts the developers, I think, is you're showing an active tourist population that's there, that shows up, and get them out to restaurants, get them in hotels, increase length of stay in Joliet. And finally, we do need to target those capital needs in a multi-year plan. So with that, I know it's a lot to process. I've been studying it for 4 years, so hope this has been informative. Again, I'll close with Sean Kelly. It's definitely not too late for Joliet was his assessment. A lot of people said it was too late for Eastern State, and we've proven them wrong. So happy to take your questions, comments, feedback.
Well, that was an excellent presentation.
Thank you, Mayor.
And I think obviously you believe that this fits in with the museum, with the Route 66, that the prison is a natural fit. Could you give any number of how many requests you guys are receiving on a yearly basis to get in the prison from tourists?
Well, at one point, Elaine was collecting nickels there, and she had a pretty full jar. It's a very unscientific way to do it, but certainly Jim Hawk can attest to the emails and phone calls he gets from all over the world. Just let us in. I just want to get in to take pictures. Just please. The guy from who was the gentleman? I don't know if he was sent, but it was his lifelong dream to get into prison after watching Prison Break. So I mean, this is major stuff to people, right? And they're already coming. I mean, that's the part that I think is compelling. It'd be one thing if we had to create this brand and we had to create a tourist corridor. We have a lot of the parts already there.
I guess then for me, I don't want to say I'm stuck on it, but we say 3.8 million, which CMAP estimated. We say that's a bad number, but we don't know what the right number is.
That is correct.
How do we get a better handle on that before your board or this council takes action? Is there a way we could do that without guessing?
Well, the short answer is no. That the state, we've asked the state for years if we can have access to do exactly that, and they won't allow us in there to do that. But the long answer, I think I mentioned earlier, is the $3.8 million number comes from renovation of buildings, providing utilities out there, a whole lot of things, and access to the buildings that, as Greg pointed out, people won't even really be able to go into buildings. They'll be able to stick their head in and take a look at the corridors of where the prison cells are. They'll be able to look in at different points, and the focus of the tour will be talking about them and their uses from the exterior, along with the history that occurred. So the initial focus is going to be, again, security on the site, and regular police patrols, and then proper signage, and making arrests of people and letting it known that the city owns it now, and trespassers will be prosecuted. The other thing is once you start tours, people will see activity out there. They'll see more cars, see more people. They'll know somebody could see them and call the cops. So the 3.8 million was also included $1 a square foot landscaping. And I showed you the picture of the kind of landscaping they envision. We're not going to sod it.
Well, I wonder at this point, if we're having, and we are, having a serious discussion about buying this, if we can make that contingent, tell the state we're not going to take this off of their hands until we can get an honest assessment of what it's going to cost. I'm not sure if they would continue to deny us, especially, we now have access to go and arrest people. Our police have access to do that. Jim, I know this won't be your problem, so.
Oh,
I'm directing
I know.
it at you, but.
But I let Senator McGuire and Representative Walsh know that this was on the agenda this evening, and I said, I know you're busy in Springfield making sausage, so you won't be able to attend. But at another meeting, both of them will come here and tell you how hard they've tried to get Department of Corrections and the state to allow us in there to do that kind of assessment, and they're not willing to do it. And that, so you got to catch 22 here. The museum boards ask the same thing, and it's what are we taking on, and so by virtue of having the environmental exposure evaluated, knowing that there's no exposure that way, and again the fact that everybody thinks we already own it, and people are getting in there endangering themselves. It's a public safety liability exposure for the city. Legally, maybe not, but certainly from a PR perspective, the fact that we could take over, but we didn't, and let this happen, could be an accusation that lies out there.
Questions, comments?
Your Honor, I agree, Your Honor. You know, I think that, I can see the potential. The potential's there, and I think the project's exciting. You know, I think, you know, that it would be a destination point for a lot of visitors. But, you know, without us getting in there or allowing someone to get in there to assess the situation, to see what the cost to remediate the biohazards, and the safety hazards of people just being in there, it'd be difficult, right, at this point to do anything with it. But, so the state won't let us in there, but they'll let us assume the whole institution as is.
For $10.
You know, so I mean, you know, I think, you know, working with our legislators to try, as you suggested, Mayor, to try to get that assurance that we can get in there so we can make a better decision, I think is the way to go.
Yeah, maybe we'll try going up the ladder. I mean, we could try.
Yeah.
If our state senator hasn't had any luck, maybe we'll try a different route.
Certainly, and I will say that's been our board's concern too, is just what is our cost of ownership?
Right.
It's too many unknowns, excuse me. It's too many unknowns right now. And sure, if I was the state and I wanted to unload something on a city for $10, yeah, you can get that, but it's just, we've got too much going on right now in this city and too many projects to be that uncertain. So I'm very hesitant. And I used to work at the place, you know, that was my place. I was probably one of the first women to work the gallery at that time back in the 70s. So yeah, it's...
You can help us with tours.
Right.
No, in all seriousness, certainly that's, again, that echoes our board's position as well.
This is just, we don't have enough information. I don't.
Would you
Mayor?
consider, if a motion to table was made, instead of giving us an up or down vote, but,
Motion to table, I would consider a motion to table till we find out more about it.
Second.
Mayor?
yes,
Mr. Shanahan has volunteered to reach out to the Department of Corrections attorney that he's been dealing with on the media exposure and make that formal request and get a formal reply from DOC.
okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I hope this don't sound too stupid or wrong, but if we can go in, or people can break in, what do we need to do to go in to assess it? I know you said.
That sounds awesome, Councilman.
Somebody told me to ask that. I would never do that.
I'm ready.
I'm just saying, what do we need? I mean,
I'm not sure a contractor who's going in to evaluate it's willing to get a grappling hook out and climb the wall.
There's instructions online, I believe, on how to get in there.
that answered my question. My second question, briefly, again, it kind of goes back to what Mike said about, you know, the people going in. You showed pictures with people actually standing in the cell blocks. So that's not going to happen because I think Jim used to, they would just peep in the windows to see the cell blocks. It's not, I don't think the people would get the same feel for going. And then, you know, of course, then they go back home and tell their friends, well, man, you don't want to go there. You know, you don't really get to see anything until you can really get into the buildings and fix them up. So I think that would be kind of a drawback from the tours. We wouldn't get the same results that some of the other prisons.
You get people bloodthirsty, better show them blood.
Right, you know, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, we talked about kind of what are called engineered barriers, and there's one area we're able to step in and kind of fully look around the cell block. But I agree, you want that experience if you're going into a prison, sure.
The idea, though, is eventually to provide that. What's the?
Yeah, just sort of, you know, every year I have kind of a rough 5-year plan, but, you know, target a building and say we want this building opened, and for that matter, target some of the buildings and say this one can be gone. So, yeah, and I made the analogy with the revenue spigot, and that is the idea that you start with a drip and you keep going every year and keep going and keep going and keep cranking that thing till you have a waterfall.
Greg did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm from Joliet all my life. I know the prison, a believer, had been fortunate enough to go in there athletically many years ago. But, you know, there's so many other groups that you mentioned also, that Collins Street Task Force, Forest Preserve, maybe the Joliet Park District, obviously the Department of Corrections. I'd like to see more of them get on board. I'd like to see the assessment as you spoke about it. I'd like to know more what our exposure is. Some great movies you talked about, but today I just kind of see it as that other movie, The Money Pit.
Nicely done.
So
Certainly, yeah.
But I am for it, but I couldn't vote for it today. And we're not being asked for, I realize that.
Sure. Understandable.
I think what we have here is, you know, we have a lot of people with a romantic vision. Let's get down to nuts and bolts. One of the pressing issues for those that are in favor of considering taking it over is the longer it stays with the state and they don't put millions into it, the more it's going to deteriorate. I got some shocking news for you. Once we buy it for $10, unless we put millions up front, it's going to continue to deteriorate. So we don't know how bad it's gotten since the last time we were allowed in for a tour, which was back in 2013. Number one, and I do appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
You know, the hard work that was put into it. I don't compare Joliet to Philadelphia. We don't have the North Church. We don't have the Liberty Bell. We don't have all those things that are streaming prior to Eastern State, which is, from what I understand, a nonprofit corporation.
Correct.
Not city-owned, not county-owned. So in other words, should that stop to produce, should that stop to self-sustain, they can go bankrupt. Once we own this, we own all the headaches, and as Councilman Mudron says, we own the money pit forever. There's no turning back once we take ownership of this. And we don't have any idea what it's going to cost. We've all admitted that. We have no idea. We don't like that number. Isn't the same as saying that the number, hey, you're right, 3.2 million, CPAT may be off. It might be 6.4 million, not 1.2 million. We don't know what the number is because we haven't been in there and had they did a thorough tour of it and a thorough analysis. Why wouldn't we trust their analysis? You know, they're a professional organization that communities in Northern Illinois turn to all the time for huge projects, from transportation to tourism. So, you know, I see this as pretty much a non-starter with the lack of any reasonable information to make a wise business decision on it. And remember, co-ownership is like when you're a teenager, your grandpa co-signs for your loan. Grandpa owns that car. And when you stop paying, he pays. The city is the entity with deep pockets in that partnership. Should somebody get injured in there, should somebody get sick in there, they're coming after us. So there's a huge, which again Councilman Mudron can appreciate, the risk exposure side. There's a huge risk exposure on that, and I tend to still want to fall back on the CPAT report because we don't have anything else, and that's millions. Without millions being pumped in, it's going to continue to deteriorate. It sounds like another project that we spent $15 million on, where it's just going to move forward being the same as it always was. That's all.
Yeah, first of all, I thought the presentation was great. I mean, it really showed us everything. But the one thing that I'm not comfortable with, I mean, I don't know if too many things where you'd buy something without getting a chance to look it over and go in and see it. And I mean, it may be $3.8 million, but it may be a lot more. And, you know, me personally, I don't think we have that kind of money. And, you know, I think that's something that we need to look at long and hard before we make that decision.
Certainly. Again, echoing sentiments on our board as well.
I'll just make one comment. Sure. This past summer, Senator McGuire did take the board of directors on the museum and myself and a few other people on a tour of the museum. And it was, the prison, I'm sorry, of the prison. We took a road trip and, you know, it's quite a mess out there. The brush and everything, we had to go through that. There's broken glass everywhere, but it was overall, you know, pretty exciting. It was pretty exciting, but there is a lot of deterioration. I was in that building about, I want to say maybe 15 years ago, and it doesn't look anything like it did back then. But what gets me is why the state can just let it sit there and deteriorate, and why no one can hold them responsible for that building. And to just give it to us to say that it's going to do all these great things, which it possibly could. But again, the unknowns are what we're dealing with. It's just that I don't understand why we can't hold them accountable for fixing up that building and just let it sit there deteriorate since they own it. That's the part I don't get.
Well, moving forward, I think we should redouble, Marty, our efforts to get in there and get an assessment so we can make an intelligent decision. I think your board would want the same thing, Greg?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So I guess my recommendation would be that we table this tonight and go back and see if we can get inside, take a look at it.
If you want a motion to table,
Yep.
that's certainly a motion to table.
We did have a motion and a second on the floor to table.
Table?
Yes. There's a motion and seconded to table Council Memo 240-17, a resolution urging the Illinois General Assembly to introduce legislation to transfer ownership of the Joliet Correctional Center prison to the City of Joliet and to the Joliet Historical Museum. Councilman Hugg?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman?
You can't see the floor where it says it's never too late to mend. I'll vote aye.
Councilman Turk?
I'm going to vote aye, and Greg, it was an excellent presentation. Even at 9:05 in the evening, you kept my interest. It was excellent.
That is a huge deal, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, I appreciate it.
Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Great, awesome presentation.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And thank you all for the continued support. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Motion carried, it was tabled. Council Memo 241-17.
Yes, related to Marty, to the city. Marty, is there absolutely nothing, I'm not talking about partnerships and good neighbors. You know, if this was a park district, a school district, big lawsuit up north over bleachers with the school district when the city, is the state completely immune to any kind of fines that we may issue? Are they immune legally, or we just don't want to do it because we want to hurt the feelings?
I would have to look into that.
Could you look in that?
Yes.
I mean, because, it seems to be their problem right now.
Or I'll just wait till Thursday and you can ask Mr. Regis.
Actually, Marty, that's an interesting point. We find property owners in the city for not maintaining their property.
It's a great point.
Why is this different?
Absolutely.
Because they won't be able to pay the fine?
You got that right, that's a good one.
Council Memo 241-17 was previously tabled to the May 16th council meeting. Under bids and contracts, award of contracts, Council Memo 243-17, award of contract for the 2017 pavement marking program. Council Memo 244-17, award of contract for the 2017 sidewalk curb replacement project. And Council Memo 245-17, award of contract for the Union Station Plaza improvements 2017. It's recommended Council Memos 243 through 245-17 be approved.
So moved.
To approve?
Question, Mayor? On Council Memo 245-17, the Union Station Plaza improvements, will that in any way take away from the Catherine Dunham statue that's out there? Is that going to stay there? Is it going to be moved?
It has to be moved for the renovation, but whether or not it's located back on that site or some other public place has been yet to be decided.
Okay, and my suggestion there was, that's a very important statue. Catherine Dunham was a wonderful dancer way before her time. And she grew up, went to Farragut Grade School, and grew up on the west side. Her father, I believe, had a store on Bluff Street. It was a cleaner's. And possibly, if we're not going to keep it there, if we could talk to the Park District or the school district, maybe put it over by Farragut Grade School or Bicentennial Park. So it's too important of a statue. It has a lot of history to it. And I mentioned Farragut School, and I'm going to tell this story real quick. Catherine was back in the day, way back in the day, she was on the basketball team or volleyball team, some sports team at Farragut School, and they went downstate to play. And when they arrived downstate, the grade school would not allow the Farragut School to play because she was a black girl, and the white girls would not play the team. So the Farragut School kids, they all gathered around Catherine, and they talked to their coach, and they forfeited the game because they didn't think it was right. And I thought for that time, for them to stand up and do something like that was amazing. So that's the type of person this woman was, that her teammates rallied around her at a time where that was just unheard of. So I just would like to put that out there, go with the Park District or City Bicentennial Park or Farragut School. Vote aye.
Well, it's been motioned
Lesson.
and seconded to approve Council Memos 243 through 245-17. Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Motion carried. Amendments, change orders, and payments. Council Memo 247-17 approved change order number 1 to subcontract for concrete for the new construction of a single-family residence at 1317 Demond. Council Memo 248-17 approved change order number 4 to subcontract for concrete for the new construction of a single-family residence at 1102 Antrim. Council Memo 249-17 approved change order number 2 and payment request number 6 for the 2016 electrical maintenance assistance contract. Council Memo 250-17 approve amendment number 3 for the Phase 1 engineering services for the Guernsey Avenue over Spring Creek Improvement Project. And Council Memo 251-17 approve change order number 1 and final for a professional services agreement for administering testing of fire and police promotional exams and entry-level police officers. It's recommended Council Memos 247 through 251-17 be approved.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Mudrin.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
What was it, 247, 249? It was a change, I guess, because the Job Corps students, what, did they give a reason why they weren't?
Their supervisor
I'm sorry.
is laid up. The guy that oversees the program is healing after surgery.
Okay.
So he wasn't able to bring the crew out.
So that's what they had to do. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next is the city manager's
Quick
report.
question, Mayor? Yes. If you don't mind. I might be having a senior moment. We did table both, what, 241 and 242, correct? We table both? Following the presentation for the museum?
Two's not on
It
there.
was
42 was removed.
233 and 241.
241 was
They're
tabled.
related to each other about the antenna.
And 242 is removed.
Okay.
We have that on here. 242 table.
.241 and, or 233 and 241 were removed from the agenda
Right.
at the beginning when you approved the agenda.
240 was tabled.
242 was,
I'm not even
There is
showing
no
242.
242.
It's not here.
sure is on my computer.
Not on the,
Mine's not showing on mine either, so that's,
not on the hard copy.
Well, that's what
For
confused me, I
the
think.
internet provider.
I got a
Oh, I'm sorry.
242.
That's right. That was the late edition
242 was added.
that came out Friday afternoon.
David.
Right, so are we going to be acting on it at all?
We should.
We should-
Okay, there we go.
yeah.
I thought we missed
Not
something.
show up on mine, I apologize.
Okay, that's all right.
Council Memo
Thank you.
242-17 is a resolution authorizing the city to partner with Paradigm Technology Group LLC to assist with the city's internet service provider selection.
So moved.
I'll make a second.
Question?
Yes.
So David, this is what you explained to us when you were down here a couple days ago, was it, when you were talking, or was that just a couple hours ago?
It's still my birthday. Well, and actually, in a couple hours. But this particular is here's the deal. We got 2 internet pipes coming into the city. They're coming up for auto renewal in the middle of the summer. I wanted to take another look at the marketplace and see what else we could get out there, rather than just give these guys a chance for renewal. The Paradigm company is a broker type model. They're going to go out there and sweep the market, get us price points of the various providers that are down here. We'll compare that against Comcast and Business Only Broadband, who are the incumbents. Step back and try to make the right decision for the city. I just didn't want these things to auto renew because I'm not sure we're getting the best price. So thus the recommendation on the floor,
To save money.
and probably get a faster circuit
Been motioned and seconded to approve Council Memo 242-17. Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next is the city manager's report.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like Steve Jones to provide a economic development update.
Thank you. As everyone knows, we've had some discussions that have been on and off regarding the closure of 2 grocery stores on our east side. Just want to indicate that we've talked about the long term and the short term. The long term continues with regard to the market study. We're about halfway through having our consultant provide some data as to providing some evidence for future retailers that there is more demand than supply for food on our east side.
We're having difficulty hearing you over the air system.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Speak up, please.
I will speak up. We're about 3 weeks into the consultant preparing the market study for the east side, and that's our long-term strategy, to have data provided that will show prospective retailers, brokers, et cetera, that there's more demand out on the east side for food than there is supply, which of course is exactly what you want to show to encourage retail development. In the short term, there is a broker, Caton Commercial, who is the broker of record for the 2 stores that closed, and for about 2 to 3 weeks, they've had their marketing materials out on the street. They did indicate to me that they've contacted about 10 food-related businesses. They've had some interest. They're having some people perhaps come take a second look. But they kind of warned me. They said expect that after the initial flurry of activity, typically what happens is that people will kind of stand back a little bit to see what happens, whether there's other interest. And of course, more delay means they're able to negotiate a lower price for the property. So they are looking to try to attract any retailers out there that would serve food. They did indicate that about 1/3 of the interest that they've had were from actual grocery store type entities, and the other 2/3 were looking at it for other uses. So I'll certainly keep the council informed as to what happens. I mean, clearly zoning is out there that allows retail use. You have 2 stores that primarily were involved in food sales. Jackson, of course, has larger property where you've got some ancillary tenants in addition to the grocery store. So we'll keep you informed. I mean, the brokers, obviously, the quicker the brokers can make a sale, the quicker that brokerage commission comes in. So they're motivated to get this done. I was told that when the stores were emptied of their stock, it became apparent that perhaps the stores were not in as good a shape as they would have expected. I don't know exactly what that means, whether there were some issues with the shelving units, whether there were problems that were kind of covered up with materials, but they said that'll be a little bit of a challenge, the fact that it's not exactly move-in condition. So I'll keep you all informed.
Thank you.
Quick question. What about the Ultra store?
I have no updates as to what the status of that is, whether that's in the hands of a broker at this point in time, whether they're going to just wait a while on that. So I've really been focusing in on the east side at this point. And that, keep in mind, just this is me talking. I'm sure brokers will talk about this as well. There are 3 grocery stores at that corner, and I think the likelihood that somebody would enter the marketplace with another grocery store is probably remote, just because of the competition. So once there's a decision to really proceed with some sort of sale or lease, and I'm not sure whether Ulta owns the store or leases it. Generally, you go through a long process by which ownership does decide, okay, we're not going to lease it or sell it to a big box. We have to accept the possibility that we have to subdivide it to multiple spaces. And of course, that all takes time in terms of the decision making and planning. So unless there's somebody in their pocket or someone is taking over Ulta stores, I would say that this would probably be relatively drawn out, similar to the way Dominic's was.
It's a shame because that whole plaza there is just being remodeled. A new store, Ross went in there and everything, and now we're going to have an empty corner.
Right, and when you have subsequent businesses that have sort of depended upon a certain level of traffic flow, of course, other retailers start to hurt for no fault of their own.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, members of council, I believe the position of city manager is a temporary job, and it should be. I brought my experience and my long career and all the things I learned and worked in other cities to the city of Joliet. I think relationships are primary and everything is secondary. My role here in Joliet's been to continue relationships that have been nurtured and developed over years, and I've had the privilege to work with the partnership with the area school district superintendents and the presidents of both Joliet Junior College and University of St. Francis. I've also been fortunate to serve on the boards of the Will County CED, City Center Partnership, and the Joliet Chamber of Commerce. During my time here, I'm very proud to be part of the many projects in the city, such as the multimodal in the downtown, go through the process of developing a downtown plan, which is now in its implementation phase, including the reconnection of Chicago Street and the expansion of Van Buren Plaza. The industrial development at Center Point installed the bones several years ago, and now we're seeing the tremendous growth in that area of business and job creation the city of Joliet has never seen before. I have to say that my temp job in Joliet's been the most challenging, but also the most rewarding. Joliet has urban renewal of an established downtown, new residential growth on the west side, residential growth that we've done on the east side to make sure it stays, the neighborhoods are rejuvenated. Industrial development and a thriving commercial corridors and that anchor our revenues and in sales tax rather than property tax, and we're the only city in the state that has the ability to supplement our income with 2 casinos. I'm proud of this mayor and city council because you had the courage to go through the city's first strategic plan. The planning process created a document that allows the administration to make proposals in the annual budget to achieve the goals that you've set forth in that document. As the new city manager gets settled, you've got 3 new council members, and I encourage you to bring back the same facilitator to do an abbreviated strategic plan update because the 3 new members need to have buy-in. And also, we've achieved a lot of those goals that we set forth in the first 3 years of a 5-year program. And it's time to look forward again, and that way the administration can focus on results. When I interviewed for this position, I told the city council that I believe the role of the city manager is very much like the conductor of an orchestra. Well, coordinating many of the different and diverse services that we provide our residents. However, tonight I want to compliment the directors and the administrative staff here because I think it's a little more like improvisational jazz. I may start out, but with just a look, I can pass that baton to any one of them and they can take over and lead the discussion and pass it back to me or to any other member of the staff in a fashion that is very professional. And I compliment them for that. My hope is that I leave behind a playbook for these department directors and staff can continue to embrace and implement, because in the end, I think they're all self-motivated and to achieve the goals and expectations that you establish for them. When I pursued a career in local government and advanced that possibility by obtaining my Master in Public Administration, I didn't realize how gratifying it would be to me personally. Many years now, I've gone to high school seniors who are in government and told them about local government. And I ask them what they do first thing in the morning. And most of them are embarrassed to tell me they use the toilet, but I said, well, did you take a shower? Did you brush your teeth? You know, that's us. Did you flush the toilet? That's us. Did you get on the bus and go on the city streets? That's us. Did you stop at a stoplight? That's us. Did you see a police car? Did you hear the ambulance siren? That's us. We touch your lives every day, and as much as we're taken for granted, It's certainly much more personal than I think county, state, or certainly the federal level. So again, the most I can hope for in my time here is that I've touched some of the lives of the residents of this great city. Thank you very much.
Next is new business, not for final action or recommendation.
New business?
You know, I don't know if it's new or old, and I always get it crossed up, but I'll be remiss. Going back to Bishop Matthews and the Washington Street property, I have to say I was privy to a meeting with staff, and I just need to let the city know, the council know, the mayor know, that the staff worked diligently with Bishop Matthew to get him through the process if he was going to go to a 2 or 3. And I just need to, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I didn't say nothing. I thought Bishop Matthew was on board with the recommendation because he hadn't met the criteria. But I do want everyone to know how diligent the staff worked, you know, with Bishop Matthew, and we'll continue to work with him, I'm sure, in the near future, what he wants to do. So it was a lot of detail in that, but I won't go into all of that. But I just wanted to say that.
I have 2 things. One's quick. Councilman Dickinson has been appointed to all the committee positions that Councilwoman Brewer had. And then, Don, once you get up to speed, we'll definitely make you the chairman of the committee. Everyone else is on the council. Number 2, I know it's late, but I think we need to talk briefly about the complaints we're getting from some of the west side subdivisions about flooding. Specifically, I know this is an ongoing problem. Councilman Hugg, I know you've been involved with Caton Crossing subdivision, and then recently Hunter's Ridge has had a significant problem with flooding out there. So, Jimby, you're not done yet. You're not off the hook. I know these are specific problems to the subdivisions. Each one is different. What is our role? What can we do? I mean, these are our residents. Whether, I know we hold bonds with the developers to develop properly these subdivisions, but what are we supposed to do in the meantime when people's property is being destroyed every time there's a hard rain?
Well, there's an old saying, and it's water always wins. It's going to flow where it wants to flow as much as we try to guide it. When we have significant events around the city at different points, we had 4 to 5 inches of rain recorded in a 2-day period. I know that Public Works Director Jim Trisna was physically out during the rain event, visiting sites along with other staff people to see what was happening, to try and keep the grates open and free of debris so that the water would flow freely into our storm system, and observe where problems existed and where what our solutions weren't working. We've all driven, I know I've driven the stretch of the Forest Preserve on Black Road there, just the east side of 55, and you can see the water is so high it's almost coming over the road there. I'll turn it over to Mr. Trisna for a few comments on his observations.
Yeah, as far as Hunter's Ridge, we're very aware of what's going on out there. There's an issue with Ridge Road. There's a culvert underneath Ridge Road, and there's not a proper outfall. And cities, myself, a couple of my staff members have met. We've met with the Corporation Council, Marty, on this. We're going to also meet with Fran Claus as soon as possible. Fran's the county engineer from Kendall County. Ridge Road's their roadway, so we're going to make sure he's on board with us. And essentially, we're going to go back to the developer, Ryland Homes, who took over Hunter's Ridge, and bring them in for a meeting and, you know, basically work with them to get a solution here. We've got a few ideas what solutions could be, combination of some storm sewers and flood routing, proper flood routing, not the way it's just going right now. So we are going to work with Ryland and Mr. Shanahan, who will now then be the interim city manager. We got a few ideas there also as far as holding their feet to the fire. But they've taken over that sub. They're not done building yet. They got a few other homes that are on vacant lots and a couple other subs in the area, so we think we've got a little leverage over them.
Okay, now, and we need to communicate this to the residents. I had probably about 10 emails from people living in the subdivision. And then Caton Crossings, I know this isn't ongoing. This didn't just happen this last weekend. Have we made any headway on how to help the people in that subdivision?
Yeah, actually, one of our engineers is working on that. Part of the problem in Caton Ridge is people don't realize that they're on a detention basin. It's supposed to go up and down, and it's doing that. And I don't think it's going up much higher than it was supposed to go up, but we also need to look a little bit. We're finding now there's some situations where they're complaining there's some blockage in some of the storm sewer pipes, which we'll need to look into that, make sure they're clear. There was a situation where some of the flared end section, the pipes that drain into the detention pond, had basically loosened up their connection with the rest of the storm sewer because of the soil below them that was holding them up. And we are looking at doing a project yet, maybe sometime this year, to reattach those flared end sections. We did the same thing in Brighton Lakes last year, and we have set aside some of our operations money to do that work for them. But part of it may be a little more education. Those ponds have to go up and down. That's what they're for. They're not, detention basin doesn't just stay at a certain level. It's set up, they're designed so they may have 4 to 5 feet of flow to them.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is that the ponds can't hold the capacity when we have a hard rain, that they're not deep enough.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case, but we'll look into it a little further.
Okay.
Next, we have public comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak under public comments?
Hi again, Rachel Ventura. Many of you guys know that I ran on a tourist platform for my campaign, so I'm very excited to see the prison is up here being considered. So thank you to everyone who worked hard. Thank you, Hawk, for everything you've done for our city over the years. As far as the prison goes, like the presentation said, it would bring jobs, revenue to the city. It would increase our tourism that we already have. So things like the Rialto, which were a big problem last year, could then have increased numbers there as well. The Parks Service, the Forest Preserve can all tie into other projects here, including maybe having Ren fairs or concerts or other things like that would additionally drive more traffic to our town. Also, as Hawk had said, if there are more people coming to that area, it's going to decrease crime in the area as well as decrease crime or people breaking into the prison itself. I understand that the money is an issue. So perhaps one of the things we could do is go back to CPAT and ask them if they could redline some items that were not appropriate that we saw in the presentation. If that's not possible, I'm excited to hear that Mr. Shanahan is trying to move forward with trying to get over the roadblocks. And that's what I'm going to implore the council to do, is try to find ways to get over the roadblocks, because this is an opportunity for our city. And as many of you have done when you've campaigned, I've knocked on a lot of doors. And there was a lot of times when I talked about tourism, the next thing people said was, well, what are you doing with that prison? What's your idea for the prison? What is the city doing for the prison? So that was an ongoing theme. So I really think that this is a great opportunity. So if we can get over some of the roadblocks and find some tangible numbers, this is a great thing. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Hello, my name is Beata Aident. I am the writer of the letter you guys all received yesterday. I just want to make it very clear, all the pictures and all the problems in our subdivision, Caton Crossing, not Caton Ridge, they are not based on this weekend's rain. This is ongoing thing for the past 7 or 8 years. It's affecting over 200 homes. I'm not the only one. And I know from sources as Scott Gapsevich that about 7, 8 years ago, there was water, what Scott called, introduced into our ponds. Our ponds were meant to hold only so much water. When there was water from outside of our subdivision introduced in our ponds, which we have 4, we started flooding. And flooding beyond anybody's comprehension here. We're not talking on the basements. Our whole subdivision's landscaping is destroyed. Our trees are gone, our shores are gone, our sidewalks are gone. It's just destruction that we can do nothing about. When I reached to Scott for help, Scott's only excuse always is that we as homeowners association are responsible for maintaining the ponds. We cannot maintain them. with extra 15 feet of water in them after an inch or inch and a half of rain. We have no access to pipes. We have no access to the ponds, period. We are not capable of flipping the bill. Scott Gapsevich told our old board last year that we need to install new riprap. We had riprap around the pond, which is the rocks around the ponds, because the water level in our ponds for the past 7-8 years goes 15 feet up, 15 feet down, nonstop. It washed all the riprap into the ponds. They are gone. They are on the bottom of the ponds. So Scott's recommendation was to install a new one, which our old board knew, at a cost of $188,000. Put our association in debt. We are $131,000 in debt as of right now. The riprap that was installed in October of last year, so 6 months ago, now it's underwater. So we cannot afford maintaining those ponds until whatever extra water is being pushed into us and draining into us needs to be cut off. I don't know if there's any other solution. And you guys think I'm talking about 5 inches of rain? No, I know that after 5 inches of rain, the whole Joliet's got water problems. We have that after an inch or inch and a half, every time it rains. My neighbors don't leave homes at all in the rain season. Me and my husband, we had to sleep on a couch listening to sun pumps because they run 4 of them nonstop, causing, what's it called, Tom? Power shortage, that all your breakers shut off. It is absolute uncontrollable thing. Natural gas generator and 5 sun pumps, and we can still not go to bed at night. And this is my whole subdivision. It's not only me. So we need help. We need to have it explained to us where is the extra water coming from into our subdivision. When we looked at the original plans from Wiseman and Hughes, our ponds were closed off. The 5 ponds was supposed to be the only 5 ponds that are draining our sewers and our ponds. That's it. Right now, we getting water from somewhere else draining into our ponds. And actually, we can see it at the Morse Sutter Pond. When the water comes up high, it's literally like a water volcano coming through the Theodore cornfield.
Jim, do you know, is that accurate that there's other subdivisions' water flowing in there?
There's water coming off 59 that runs to their sub, for one thing, and some of that water off 59 actually picks up the detained flow from subdivisions upstream. That was always designed that way. We will have to look into more, though, as far as if there's something that wasn't planned to go that way. But I know I know there's water off 59 that comes through there. There's detained flow from the detention basins and other subdivisions coming through there. There may be some water coming off the undeveloped property to the south, the Bronx, I call it the Bronx Farm still. That may be going that way. It may have naturally gone that way. Some of it may do that way. But we'll have to take a look at that and get back. We'll have to look into this further. And as far as the elevation too, we'll check. I don't think it's going up 15 feet. That's higher than the ceiling. It's not. I can't imagine it's going from this up higher than that.
Well,
but
the original
we need to take some elevation shots and see and look at maybe monitor after a 1-inch rain. Besides after this, I mean, we'll be able to take elevation shots and see where we're at as far as, you'll see debris lines in the yards, what's going on.
Yes.
Jim, why don't you talk after the meeting, and maybe we can organize a trip where we can take a look out there, see what's going on?
Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Seeing none, we have mayor and council comments.
Don?
I have nothing. I'd just like to say, thanks, Jim, for everything. Was it something I said? I just get here and you're going. But seriously, I'd like to thank you for everything you've done for our city. Thank you very much.
Jim as well, my sentiments exactly. Thank you for all of your professionalism, all of your work, and enjoy your retirement. Yes, sir.
Jim, at this point, I have my doubts of whether you really want to leave or not, because you sure as heck don't want this meeting to end. You might as well just stay on. Jim, you came in at a time in the city when both leadership as well as policy and direction of the city was changing drastically after decades of the same old, and that was a controversial time to come in, and you stepped right in. I'm a little disappointed because I've got a whole repertoire of Vice President Pence jokes, and now you're leaving, so it's incumbent on this council to pick somebody who looks like Vice President Pence. But you always did it as professional. We agreed on most things, but we had our disagreements, and it was always professional from you to me and me to you. And I think you did a tremendous job. You really made Joliet look good. And, you know, Marty, this is the point where I'm supposed to say you got some big shoes to fill, but you're both the same size. So you got some little shoes to fill, my friend.
Jim, I just wish you the best, you and Ms. Hawk, and, you know, enjoy yourself, and thanks for everything.
You're going to talk about today, right?
Yeah, briefly.
Jim, thank you for all the help you've given me in my 2 years, and good luck with retirement.
Well, Jim, been a long haul. You had quite big shoes to fill, and I'm not talking about personal shoes. I mean, this whole place was big shoes to fill. But I'll never forget when we were looking over the resumes and what really stuck out on your resume, and I believe I told you this a long time ago. He says one of his jobs as city manager is to make his council people look good. And he has far exceeded that. And that jumped off the page for me, and I thought, this is the guy that we want. So Jim, thank you for everything. You worked very hard. You brought us to a new level. And I just want to thank you for your service and enjoy your retirement. You and Julie, it's well-deserved. Thank you for everything.
When I was interviewing, I remember saying, I want my picture in the paper twice, once when I arrive and once when I leave. And I saw that the paper put in on my departure the same picture that they put in when I got here.
So you haven't aged at all.
That's it, yeah.
Jim, yeah, just to want to tell you thank you for the help you've given me personally and the service that you gave to the city and its residents and the mayor and council here, and wish you a healthy, long, and fun retirement.
Well, finally, Jim, again, thank you. I think you've done a great job here. Enjoy your retirement. The 2 years I've been able to work with you as mayor, I work with you on a daily basis. There was never a question or an issue that you didn't have an answer for. I never saw you lose your cool or lose your temper. I think you are the epitome of a professional, so thank you for all the good work you did. Real quickly, a couple things I need to talk about. Yesterday, the National Hookup of Black Women was awarded the 2017 Inspire Award by St. Joe's Hospital. It's a great honor for that organization, so congratulations to those people. National Hookup of Black Women. JT Central had their Kermes event last week. It's the annual celebration of the life and legacy of Cesar Chavez. It's a great event at Joliet Central. It's the second year they've done that in a row. The week before, Joliet Central hosted a presentation with Chicagoland Speedway and Scott Paddock unveiling the new photo ops for the big race this year. They also donated $4,000 to Habitat for Humanity. So again, thank you to the principal and staff over at Joliet Central and Joliet Township High Schools. Hufford Junior High today had a remembrance program at the Joliet Jewish Synagogue, remembering the Holocaust. It was a very moving program. Thank you to Hufford and the Joliet Jewish Synagogue for that. Councilman Mudger and myself earlier today walked through Union Station. I believe other people are going on the tour tomorrow. It's really impressive the work that's being done inside. I think you're going to be excited when you see it. And they're moving quickly. After years of delays, it is coming together. So great work over there. And then finally, I want to personally thank and compliment Sheriff Mike Kelly and the Will County Sheriff's Police. Obviously, we all know the horrible event that happened in the county this last week. I think they've done a great job. They've been very professional with their investigation. Chief Ben, I don't know how much of assistance we've been, but I'm sure whatever they've asked for, we've given to them. And then I also want to thank all the Joliet residents that went down there to help search for that little girl. I think there were hundreds of people from our community. So, you know, it's a horrible, tragic event, but I think the professionals and our citizens have really stepped up and answered the call. So thank you, Sheriff Kelly, for your professionalism. And Jim, again, thank you, and I think it's time. You can retire now.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.